Welcome back to the Burgh Breakdown. I'm going to close things out with a little Pittsburgh Penguins conversation here. The Pens made some headlines yesterday, and honestly, I didn't have it on my bingo card, and I don't know if anybody else did. I think I led off a show yesterday saying the same exact thing, but it's the facts. Nobody expected to see Ville Koivunen sign for 8 years at $4 million. $4 million, sure. But if I was thinking prior to this news coming out that Ville Koivunen's next contract was going to be $4 million, I would have thought, okay, that's a 2-year bridge deal to see what you got in the guy. That's why you're paying $4 million, because you want to have him for a short term and you want to see what he's got. 8 years at $4 million is a break the mold type of contract. We know we're entering uncharted territories when it comes to the NHL and its salary cap. So we've seen that start to permeate into the contract situations around the NHL. Hence, Leo Carlsson getting $18 million. Hence, Macklin Celebrini getting $18.8 million. And hence, a player that has 2 career goals scoring an 8-year contract worth $32 million in total. A lot of what came out from Kyle Dubas from various outlets, Michelle Crecchiolo of Pens Inside Scoop and others who were posting, I believe it was email responses that Kyle Dubas was sending out about this contract was, well, they believe in him and they're taking a little bit of a risk because they think this guy's going to turn into a bona fide middle six winger. And if he does, that contract in today's day and age is going to become a heck of a bargain. We just have yet to see it with our own eyes. So when I look at this entire situation, it was always strange how quiet it was, right? It kind of faded into the back because of all the other big headlines and big storylines that surrounded the Penguins. Your Jason Robertsons, your Jacob Trubas, you're moving up in the drafts, expecting to shell out a big package to get into the top 10 at the NHL draft. And then even after the draft, the story of the Rucks being drafted to the Penguins, them coming to Pittsburgh and participating in development camp, Evgeny Malkin re-signing, Igor Chinikov re-signing. We seemingly forgot, hey, Ville Koivunen is still sitting there without a contract. He was a restricted free agent, but he wasn't arbitration eligible. So why is it taken so long to get this deal done? And now we know, because it's not a small deal. It's not just a throw it up on the board because, it's only a couple years and we can always work around it. It's an 8-year deal. And sure, yeah, you can work around it if it doesn't work out. You might be able to allocate it somewhere else. In fact, $4 million in 5 years is probably going to be the new league minimum, for Christ's sake, considering the way that this league is going. But still, no one expected to see 8 years for a guy who put up 2 goals and 7 points in half a season last year. Now, with that said, this doesn't need to be a whole out bashing of Ville Koivunen, because he does have a lot of upside. He does have a lot of potential, and he's only 23 years old. Right? This contract, if it pans out, carries him through until he's 31 years old. So you get him for the entire prime of his career. You essentially eat up a lot of his unrestricted free agency opportunity. So if it works out, it's probably going to wind up being a contract that we would look back and say, man, that's unfortunate for Ville Koivunen. But the Penguins bet on him, and he is betting that he can carve out a nice career for himself with the Pittsburgh Penguins. I would imagine, and Kyle Dubas said otherwise, but I would imagine that this makes him a virtual lock to make the roster. If he shows up to camp and he looks horrible, okay, maybe they try to send him down. But this is a guy in year 1 of an 8-year deal making $4 million a year. Historically, You don't send those guys down to the minors. The problem is you have a lot of other guys that did the same exact thing this offseason, that just signed contracts that have substantial price tags attached to them. So the question then that brings me to is, are we about to see a trade go down with the Pittsburgh Penguins before training camp, or maybe even before the season starts in late September? There is 6 forwards that you would have probably written in pen that signed contracts this offseason. Nicholas Robertson, who they just avoided arbitration with, Andrei Kuzmenko, who signed for $5 million. Yes, on a 1-year deal, but signed for $5 million. Igor Chinakhov, who is a lock to make the roster. I mean, the guy was on pace, if he would have played a full season at the way he was playing in Pittsburgh, would have scored nearly 40 goals last year. Evgeny Malkin, not going anywhere. And Connor Dewar, who, again, not going anywhere. Your best, if not second best penalty killer, and a guy that can play center and wing. So that's 5 guys of your 12 forwards that just signed a contract. You can add in Blake Lizotte, who signed a deal just before the season came to an end. You can add Sidney Crosby because he's Sidney Crosby. And all of a sudden, you only have 5 spots left for Ville Koivunen to battle for. Ben Kindle, you could probably whittle it down to 4 because Ben Kindle's your third-line center, if not your second-line center. And forgot to mention with people that just signed contracts, Tommy Novak. Okay, so we're down to 3. Are you going to make Ville Koivunen your 4th-line winger? I mean, you could bench Soderblom. You could bench Brazeau. Neither of them played poorly at the end of last season, but I could see you giving Ville Koivunen an opportunity in favor of one of those guys. But it feels like, and I'm not sure what the return would be, maybe we're finally going to see a Rickard Rakell and or, probably more so, or a Brian Rust trade. Definitely or. I don't think you trade both of them. There's been a lot of trade speculation in the last 2 years on both of them. And I'm not saying the Penguins need to trade these guys. But if you're reading the tea leaves, and I've done it incorrectly at times, I've done it correctly at times. But if I'm reading the tea leaves, this feels like foreshadowing that another trade is coming. That you're putting stock in Ville Koivunen to be one of your pieces throughout the entirety of the 2026-27 season. And then you add on the fact that you have Rutger McGroarty, who's expected to have a chance to crack the roster. Avery Hayes, another player that you would look at in that same light. Tristan Brose, maybe, you'd look at in that same light. They have a laundry list of forwards that could wind up deserving an opportunity this year. And a lot of them that are getting paid pretty handsomely this year and in the following years. Maybe there needs to be a move to make some space for some of these guys. Brian Rust, coming off a year where he scored 29 goals and 36 assists, finishing with 65 points in 72 games, just once again being that steady force atop the Penguins lineup. He's a good penalty killer. He's a locker room leader. And he's a guy that I feel like 31 other teams, if the Penguins were to open up the market for him, would be interested in trading for. Now, 31 other teams might not be able to, afford Brian Rust. Teams like the Stars have no space whatsoever. I don't think Vegas has any cap space because when do they ever? And I don't think all 31 teams have what the Penguins would be looking for in return. But at a base level, 31 teams would love to have Brian Rust on their team if the Penguins choose to try to shop him. And I think it's pretty similar for Rickard Rakell. He scored 24 goals, registered 24 assists for an even 48 points in 60 games. And that's after the fact that he missed an extensive amount of time due to I believe it was a broken wrist or a broken hand early in the season. This is a guy that picked it up to a different level late in the season, scored over 10 goals in the month of March, and showed the ability, if needed. I wouldn't say that this is a guy you go into a season expecting to be a center, but he showed the ability to play center last season. So while they don't have to make a move, while it is not imminent that the Penguins are making a move, things are just going to get really interesting over the next month, because it feels like you got too many cooks in the kitchen. And it feels like if somebody's going to get traded, yeah, you could trade Elmer Soderblom. You could trade Justin Brazeau. But does that open up a spot that would make sense for Ville Koivunen? It doesn't. The spots that make sense for Ville Koivunen are third line and up. And right now, third line and up are a bunch of people that just signed a contract extension. And then there's Rustin Raquel. So I'm not sure who would be on the other end. I'm not sure what the return would look like. But there's been speculation out there about Rustin Raquel, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that speculation come to fruition at some point between now and the beginning of the season. Again, it's still speculation on my part, but it feels like there's another shoe to drop when it comes to the Pittsburgh Penguins at forward.